Australia is often seen as a young nation, but its true history stretches far deeper than most of the world can imagine. Long before Europeans arrived, Aboriginal peoples survived 60,000 years of shifting climates, rising seas, burning deserts, and giant animals that no longer walk the earth. Later, the continent became a remote prison colony, home to the forgotten, the exiled, and the desperate. From ancient Dreamtime stories carved into the land to the struggle of building a modern nation, Australia's past is a tapestry of secrets waiting to be uncovered. Australia's geological story begins with the ancient supercontinent Gondwana, a vast landmass that once connected Antarctica, Africa, South America, India, and Australia. Around 180 million years ago, tectonic shifts slowly pulled Gondwana apart, setting Australia on a drifting journey that would shape its destiny. As the continent moved northward, isolation became its defining force. Plants and animals evolved with little outside influence, creating ecosystems found nowhere else on Earth. Over millions of years, sea levels rose and fell, alternately exposing land bridges and swallowing coastlines. The deserts expanded as the continent dried, sculpting the ancient landscapes that dominate Australia today. The red heart of the outback, the eroded mountain ranges, and the nutrient-poor soils that challenge both nature and people. Because its rocks and landforms have not been renewed by major volcanic activity or mountain building for ages, geologists describe Australia as the world's oldest continent. This deep geological age gives it a unique environmental fragility. Its soils are ancient and easily exhausted, its ecosystems finely tuned to stability rather than rapid change. Understanding this foundation is essential, because everything that followed, from the survival strategies of Aboriginal peoples to the struggles of European settlers, was shaped by this vast, old and unforgiving land. The Aboriginal peoples are among the oldest continuous cultures on Earth, arriving in Australia during the last ice age, when sea levels were lower and the climate harsher. Their survival depended on deep knowledge of the land, its plants, animals, seasons and hidden water sources. Instead of written maps, they used songlines, intricate oral pathways encoded in stories, melodies, and rhythms that guided people across deserts, mountains, and coastlines with astonishing accuracy. Aboriginal communities lived by a sophisticated system of hunting, gathering, and land stewardship. They understood how to predict animal migrations, follow seasonal food cycles, and read the faintest signs in nature, from the shape of clouds to the moisture in the wind. Their cultural life revolved around Dreamtime, a spiritual framework explaining creation, the laws of behavior, and the responsibilities individuals carry toward their land and ancestors. Dreamtime was more than mythology. It was a living legal and ethical code that structured ceremonies, kinship, justice, and environmental management. Knowledge was passed through generations not as folklore but as survival instruction. This 60,000-year legacy of adaptation shows how deeply Aboriginal cultures were entwined with the continent. They did not simply live in Australia, they lived with Australia, in a relationship so ancient that it predates most civilizations on Earth. Long before modern wildlife roamed Australia, the continent was home to megafauna, massive creatures that seem almost mythical today. There were giant kangaroos standing over 3 meters tall, enormous wombat-like diprotodons weighing more than a rhinoceros, and the fearsome thylacoleo, a powerful marsupial predator with crushing jaws. Even huge flightless birds such as Genyornis, towering above early humans, once patrolled the ancient plains. For the Aboriginal peoples, these animals were not fantasy. They were part of daily life. Early hunters developed techniques to track and corner such giants, often using natural choke points like narrow valleys or waterholes. Controlled burning, creating small fires to clear vegetation, helped them shape the landscape in ways that made hunting easier, funneling animals toward open ground. The disappearance of megafauna remains a topic of debate among researchers. Climate change at the end of the Ice Age transformed Australia's environment, drying grasslands and reducing water sources. Human hunting likely added pressure to already stressed populations. Interestingly, some Dreamtime stories contain descriptions of enormous beasts, passed down through oral tradition. These tales may preserve cultural memories of encounters with megafauna long after the creatures vanished. In this way, Australia's ancient past survives not only in fossils, but in storytelling traditions carried for millennia. Fire has always been central to life in Australia, but the Aboriginal peoples mastered it in a uniquely strategic way. Rather than fearing fire, they used it as a precise tool, what modern scholars call firestick farming. This practice involved lighting small controlled burns to refresh landscapes, reduce fuel for wildfires, and promote new plant growth attractive to grazing animals. By understanding wind direction, humidity, vegetation type, and the behaviour of different flames, Aboriginal fire managers created patchwork mosaics of burnt and unburnt land. These patterns prevented large, catastrophic fires and maintained biodiversity by ensuring a mixture of habitats. Fresh shoots attracted kangaroos and wallabies, while clearing underbrush made travel and hunting easier. Seasonal burns were timed with remarkable precision. Aboriginal communities could smell moisture in the soil, read the colour of leaves to judge dryness, and predict changes in the wind hours before they happened. This intimate knowledge allowed them to shape ecosystems sustainably for thousands of years. Today, ecologists recognise firestick farming as one of the most advanced prehistoric land management systems in the world. As Australia confronts increasingly severe bushfires, many experts advocate returning to these indigenous techniques, a reminder that ancient wisdom often holds solutions for modern crises. Long before Europeans set foot on Australian shores, the continent's northern coastline was already part of a vibrant maritime network. Beginning around the 1600s, or possibly earlier, the Macassan sailors from Sulawesi in modern-day Indonesia travelled south each year with the monsoon winds. Their goal was to harvest trepang, or sea cucumber, a delicacy highly prized in Chinese markets. These skilled navigators arrived in large wooden prows, bringing metal tools, rice, cloth, knives, and tobacco. In return, Aboriginal groups along the northern coast offered labour, food, and local knowledge of the tides and reefs. This exchange created one of the earliest recorded international relationships in Australian history. The Macassan presence influenced Aboriginal languages, especially the Yolngu people, who still retain loanwords from Macassan dialects. Cultural exchanges were evident in shared technologies, musical instruments, and even artistic styles. For Aboriginal communities, these annual visits represented a bridge to a wider world long before Europeans claimed Australian land as unknown. This early trade network shows that Australia was never truly isolated. It was part of a broader regional system of commerce and cultural sharing, an important chapter often overshadowed by later colonial narratives. When Europeans finally arrived, their impact was immediate and overwhelming. In 1770, Captain James Cook charted the eastern coastline and declared it terra nullius, land belonging to no one, despite the presence of thriving Aboriginal societies. This legal fiction allowed the British Empire to claim the continent without treaties, negotiations, or recognition of indigenous ownership. In 1788, the First Fleet landed at Botany Bay carrying hundreds of convicts, soldiers, and officials. What followed was the creation of Australia's first penal colony at Sydney Cove. Life for these early settlers was brutally difficult. Scarce food, unfamiliar climate, poor tools, and diseases ravaged both convicts and officers alike. Many did not survive their first seasons. Over the next decades, Britain transported tens of thousands of prisoners to Australia. Penal colonies stretched from New South Wales to Tasmania and Western Australia, forming the backbone of early European settlement. Convicts built roads, farms, and public buildings, often under harsh and unforgiving conditions. This era shaped the cultural beginnings of modern Australia, founded not by free settlers, but by people who had been exiled to the farthest edge of the world. It set the stage for future conflicts, expansion, and the complex relationship between newcomers and the continent's first peoples. For Aboriginal communities, the arrival of Europeans marked one of the most devastating turning points in their 60,000-year history. New diseases such as smallpox, influenza, and measles swept through populations with no natural immunity, causing catastrophic losses within a single generation. Entire clans vanished, leaving gaps in cultural memory and songlines that had been preserved for millennia. As settlers expanded inland, conflicts erupted over land, water, and sacred sites. These confrontations, now collectively known as the Frontier Wars, lasted for more than a century, though they often went unrecorded in official histories. Aboriginal warriors resisted fiercely, using intimate knowledge of the terrain to defend their homelands, but the imbalance of weapons, numbers, and political power was overwhelming. Many groups were forced off their ancestral land, severing the spiritual relationships central to their identity. Loss of country meant loss of ceremony, law, and intergenerational knowledge. Yet amid tragedy, resilience endured. Aboriginal survivors adapted to new realities, maintaining traditions in secret, protecting languages, and finding ways to navigate between two worlds. Their endurance remains one of the most powerful stories in Australia's history, one still being acknowledged and written today. In 1851, the discovery of gold in New South Wales and Victoria transformed Australia almost overnight. What began as scattered rumours soon exploded into one of the world's great gold rushes, drawing miners from Britain, China, the United States, Europe, and the Pacific Islands. Camps grew into towns, and towns into bustling cities, as tens of thousands flocked to the diggings in search of fortune. The multicultural surge reshaped Australia's social fabric. Chinese miners established thriving communities, bringing new farming techniques, medicines, and cultural traditions. European immigrants brought diverse languages, labour skills, and political ideas. The goldfields became meeting grounds where cultures mingled and sometimes clashed in a chaotic but energetic environment. Economically, the gold rush propelled Australia forward by funding railways, public buildings, and industry. Politically, it fueled calls for fair representation. Protests like the Eureka Stockade in 1854 voiced demands for democratic reforms, helping lay the foundations for the voting rights and freedoms that later defined the nation. For many, the gold rush era was a period of hardship, luck, disappointment, and hope. But collectively, it marked the moment when Australia shifted from a remote penal colony to a vibrant, globally connected society, a society built by people from every corner of the world. By the late 19th century, Australia had transformed from a scattered network of colonies into a collection of thriving settlements seeking unity. Each colony had its own laws, identity, and economic interests, yet they increasingly recognised the need for cooperation, especially in defence, trade, and infrastructure. Debates about federation gained momentum, fueled by the desire for a shared national voice and a system that could balance local autonomy with continental cohesion. After years of conventions, negotiations, and public referendums, the colonies agreed to unite. On January 1, 1901, the Commonwealth of Australia was officially born, marking the beginning of a new political era. Early federal leaders faced the challenge of defining Australia's place in the world. While cultural ties to Britain remained strong, global conflicts such as World War I and World War II forced Australia to act increasingly independently. Participation in these wars, especially the Anzac legacy, fostered a sense of national identity rooted in sacrifice, resilience, and mateship. Throughout the 20th century, Australia expanded its democratic institutions, opened its doors to new waves of immigrants, and gradually shifted from a British outpost to a confident modern nation in the Southern Hemisphere. The Federation was not just a political union, it was the birth of a national consciousness. Modern Australia is shaped by both the achievements and the wounds of its past. One of the nation's most important ongoing efforts is reconciliation with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, acknowledging historical injustices, rebuilding cultural connections, and ensuring representation in national decision-making. Movements such as the 2008 National Apology and debates around constitutional recognition show a society striving to heal old divisions. At the same time, Australia faces pressing environmental challenges. Increasingly severe bushfires, droughts, and floods have revived interest in Indigenous land management practices, particularly traditional burning methods that offer more sustainable approaches to caring for the land. Culturally, the country is defined by its remarkable diversity. Waves of migration from Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East have created a vibrant multicultural society where ancient Aboriginal traditions coexist with global influences. Looking forward, Australia stands at a crossroads, balancing economic growth with environmental stewardship, honouring ancient heritage while embracing modern innovation, and building a more inclusive identity that reflects all its people. A continent young in nationhood but old in memory, Australia carries 60,000 years of human knowledge into the future, making its story one of the most unique and enduring on Earth.